AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my husband? I, 32F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we shared a lot, from clothes to secrets, and I was always protective of her. My husband, Daniel, 34M, and I have been married for 6 years. Daniel and I have a very supportive and loving relationship, and he's a genuinely kind, hard-working person. Recently, Emily got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Mark, 30M. When she first told me, I was excited and offered to help with the wedding planning. Emily and I have different personalities. She's very detail-oriented and a bit of a perfectionist, while I tend to be more laid-back, but I thought we could make it work. Emily asked if we could host the wedding at our family home. Our house is fairly large and has a beautiful backyard that we had previously used for family gatherings, so I thought it would be a lovely venue. I mentioned that I'd be happy to host as long as she understood that I had some conditions. Specifically, I wanted Daniel and me to have some say in catering and seating arrangements because hosting a large event in our home requires planning and teamwork. Emily seemed fine with this and thanked me. Over the next few weeks, planning started to get stressful. Emily insisted on having a very expensive caterer that I personally knew wouldn't fit our kitchen setup. I suggested alternatives multiple times, explaining that the space was limited and certain catering setups wouldn't work in our home. She became defensive and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding. I explained that I only wanted things to run smoothly and avoid chaos on her big day. The tipping point came during a family dinner where Emily was discussing her seating plan. She casually mentioned that she didn't want Daniel sitting near her college friends because he was too loud and embarrassing. I was shocked and asked her to clarify. She repeated that Daniel could be a bit too obnoxious in social situations and that she didn't want him interfering with the vibe she wanted. I felt blindsided and hurt. Daniel is a quiet, polite person, and this comment seemed completely out of character for Emily. I calmly tried to talk to Emily privately about it, explaining that her comment was hurtful and unfair. She immediately got defensive and said, "I'm just trying to make sure my wedding is perfect. You don't get it because you're not the one getting married." I told her that hosting her wedding in my home was not about controlling her day. It was about respecting the space and the people in it, including my husband. She rolled her eyes and said, "Maybe you shouldn't host if you can't handle a little criticism." At this point, I realized that she wasn't willing to compromise or show basic respect for Daniel. I discussed it with him, and we both agreed that hosting under these conditions would be miserable. I called Emily and told her that I wouldn't be able to host the wedding. I explained that it wasn't just about her comment. It was about the repeated lack of respect toward Daniel and the tension that was building between us. She reacted angrily and accused me of being selfish and controlling. She said that I was ruining her dream wedding and that I clearly didn't care about her. Family members started taking sides. Our parents were upset with me, saying that I should put my sister first and that she was just trying to plan the wedding the way she wanted. A few cousins texted me, some supporting Emily and some saying I had every right to protect my home and my husband. Daniel has been supportive, saying he doesn't care about what others think as long as we handle this together. After refusing to host, Emily decided to rent a venue and excluded me from the initial planning meetings. I've been feeling a mix of guilt and relief. Guilt because it hurts to see my sister upset and because our parents are disappointed, but relief because I know hosting her wedding under those conditions would have been stressful and possibly damaging to my marriage. I did try to compromise multiple times, but she kept escalating things and making personal remarks about Daniel. Now, Emily occasionally makes snide remarks in family chats about how I refuse to support her and calls me selfish in front of others. I've tried to explain my side calmly, but she shuts down the conversation. I feel like if I had gone ahead and hosted, it would have set a precedent that it's okay for her to insult Daniel and ignore my boundaries. I want to maintain my relationship with Emily, but I also don't want to sacrifice my marriage or allow personal attacks to go unchecked. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my husband, even though it upset her and our family. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me, even though he's struggling financially. So, this is a long one, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around whether I'm in the wrong here. I, 28F, have always been pretty independent and careful with my finances. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and it's honestly the first place I've had that feels like mine. I love having my own space, my routines, and the small amount of freedom that comes with it. My sister, Claire, 32F, has always had a more chaotic lifestyle. She's sweet and fun, but she's a bit irresponsible with money and planning, which has caused tension between us growing up. Claire has been engaged to her fiancé, Jake, 34M, for about a year. Jake is a genuinely nice guy, but he has bounced around jobs and doesn't have much savings. About a month ago, he was laid off from his most recent position, and Claire reached out to me, saying that they were struggling to pay rent and bills. She asked if I would let Jake move in with me temporarily until he got back on his feet. At first, I hesitated because my place is small, and having an extra person would be a big change. I also value my privacy a lot, but I try to approach it logically. They were in a tough spot, and I knew it might only be temporary. I agreed to think about it, hoping I could find a compromise. The first conversation with Claire about specifics didn't go well. I asked how long they expected to stay and how expenses would be shared. Claire said she didn't know how long it would take for Jake to get a job and that they might only pay a little in rent because he's not earning anything right now. I told her that my bills are already tight and having someone stay rent-free for an undefined period wasn't feasible for me. I suggested maybe Jake could get a short-term room in a shared house or even Airbnb while he looked for work. Claire got upset, saying I wasn't being supportive and that families should help each other. I tried to explain that this isn't about not helping them. I offered to help him job hunt, revise his resume, and even offered some financial guidance. I also offered to cover a meal here and there or small emergency expenses if needed. But I drew a firm line at letting him live with me because my apartment literally cannot accommodate 3 people comfortably, and I can't absorb his living costs indefinitely. Claire's reaction shocked me. She called me selfish, cold, and accused me of favoring my comfort over her fiancé's well-being. She even said that if I cared about her, I would help without complaint. I stayed calm and reiterated that I'm willing to support them in ways that don't jeopardize my own stability. I tried to suggest other solutions, like looking for a short-term sublet or contacting a local employment support program, but she dismissed everything I suggested. Things got messy when our parents got involved. Claire called them crying and telling them I refused to help, painting me as the villain. My parents called me to see what was going on, and I explained my side calmly. They seemed to understand my reasoning, but encouraged me to try to find some compromise if possible. I did offer to let Jake stay for one weekend while he figured out a plan, just to be fair, but Claire rejected that too. A few days later, Jake reached out to me directly on social media. He was polite but frustrated, saying he felt unwelcome and that he didn't know why I was making such a big deal out of helping family. I replied honestly, reiterating that my apartment is small, my budget is tight, and I cannot take on a third adult indefinitely. I also reminded him that I offered help in other ways, but he seemed upset that I wouldn't let him move in. Claire stopped talking to me for a week after that. When we finally spoke, she accused me of putting rules on kindness and being miserly. She said that family is supposed to step in during hard times and that my insistence on boundaries made me look cold and uncaring. I argued that setting boundaries doesn't make someone unkind and that actually boundaries are necessary for healthy relationships, especially with family. She got angry and said that if I truly cared about her fiancé, I would make sacrifices. It's been a month since then. Claire and Jake found a temporary sublet, which is more expensive than my apartment, but at least it works for them. I haven't spoken much with Claire since the fallout. She occasionally posts passive-aggressive messages on social media, and I feel guilty sometimes because I can't help feeling like I did the right thing for myself while she and Jake are struggling. At the same time, I know I cannot compromise my own mental health and financial stability. So, AITA, I refuse to let my sister's fiancé move in with me because it would have put too much strain on my life, even though they were going through a rough patch. I feel like I tried to help in other ways, but my sister sees me as selfish. Was I unreasonable? Or is this just a boundary issue that she isn't willing to accept? AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior at my wedding and causing a huge family fallout? I, 32F, recently got married to my partner, Alex, 34M, after being together for 6 years. Planning the wedding was already a stressful process, but I thought we had managed to navigate it pretty well. That is, until my sister, Clara, 29F, decided to make it all about her. For context, Clara and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up close in some ways, but also had a lot of competition between us, especially because our parents always seemed to compare us academically and socially. She is extremely opinionated and controlling, and in the past, I've often found myself avoiding conflict with her because I didn't want to trigger a massive fight. When Alex and I got engaged, Clara was excited at first and seemed supportive, but over time, I noticed her behavior changing. She started insisting on helping with the wedding planning in ways that were really intrusive. For example, she demanded to approve the guest list, which I politely refused. She also kept pushing for changes to the color scheme, the flowers, and even my dress. I tried to accommodate some of her suggestions early on, thinking it would keep her happy, but it quickly became clear that nothing would satisfy her. Every decision I made, she had a counter-opinion, often phrased as advice, but delivered in a tone that implied I was incompetent. The most tense situation arose with the seating arrangements. Alex and I were trying to find a way to seat people who didn't know each other well or had minor disputes in the past. Clara, however, wanted certain family members seated together even though she knew they had ongoing arguments. When I explained that I wanted to avoid awkward interactions, she told me I was being ridiculous and that I needed to trust her judgment. I finally drew a line, telling her that I appreciated her help, but the seating arrangements were final. She huffed and said she couldn't believe I was being so ungrateful after everything she had done to help. The day of the wedding came, and I was already nervous about everything going smoothly. Clara, however, spent the day making subtle but pointed criticisms. She whispered to other family members about how unprepared I was, how certain decor choices were cheap, and even commented on Alex's suit in front of our extended family. The tipping point came during the reception. I had asked her not to give a speech because I was worried she might say something dramatic, but she ignored my request. When she got up to speak, she launched into a monologue that mostly highlighted my flaws growing up, with a few awkward jokes about my wedding choices sprinkled in. It was mortifying. Some guests were polite, but I saw the shocked and uncomfortable looks on several people's faces. After the wedding, Alex and I were trying to unwind when my parents called. They were furious, not at Clara, but at me for overreacting when I confronted her about the speech later. I told them that I had set boundaries and that she had disrespected me in front of everyone. They said I should have let her do what she wanted and gracefully endured the speech. I explained that this wasn't about enduring. It was about her crossing boundaries repeatedly and humiliating me on my wedding day. My father said I was too sensitive, and my mother implied that I was being petty because I was jealous of Clara's ability to command attention. Clara, of course, texted me after the wedding saying I had ruined the family atmosphere and that I had attacked her for simply expressing love and concern. I didn't respond because I was still processing the embarrassment and anger. Eventually, she called Alex directly and tried to apologize to him, but Alex refused to speak with her because he saw how she treated me. This only escalated her claims that I was being dramatic and controlling. Now, the fallout has been huge. My parents are upset with me and barely speaking. Extended family members are taking sides. Some think I was justified, while others think I overreacted. Clara has made posts on social media portraying herself as the victim, claiming that I alienated my own family and ruined the special day for everyone. I understand that my sister has always been a bit high maintenance, but I truly felt humiliated in front of our friends and family. Setting boundaries has never been easy with her, and this was my first major attempt to enforce them firmly. The situation has left me feeling isolated and guilty, especially since my parents are upset. Alex has been incredibly supportive and believes I did nothing wrong, but I keep wondering if I overstepped by confronting her so directly. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior at my wedding, even though it caused a massive family fallout. My intention wasn't to hurt her, but to protect my own happiness on one of the most important days of my life. I know family dynamics are complicated, but I can't help feeling that she crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. Has anyone else dealt with a family member undermining them on a major life event? How do you enforce boundaries without completely fracturing family relationships? AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she lost her job? So, this is going to be a long one, but I feel like context is important. I, 32F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. I work a 9 to 5 in finance, I have a small but stable apartment, and I try to keep my life organized. My sister, Lily, 29F, has always been a bit more free-spirited. She's creative, very social, and honestly, a bit flaky. She's had a series of short-term jobs over the past few years, moving from one city to another, never really settling down, and I've often helped her out financially when she got in a pinch. I should mention that our parents are divorced and live far away, so I'm usually the first person Lily turns to when she's struggling. A few weeks ago, Lily called me in a panic. She had just lost her job as a marketing coordinator, and she had nowhere to go because her lease was ending in her city. She wanted to move in with me temporarily until she could get back on her feet. Now, this is where it gets tricky. My apartment is small. I have a one-bedroom place, so there's barely room for me and my cat, let alone a grown adult. I also have a job that requires a lot of focus and a strict schedule. When she asked, my first instinct was to say no, but I tried to think about a compromise. I suggested that she stay for a few days while she looked for a place, or asked if she could find some temporary housing like a short-term rental or a friend's couch. Lily immediately got upset and said she didn't understand why I couldn't just help her out like I always do. She reminded me of the last few times I lent her money or let her crash at my apartment for a week when her car broke down. I tried explaining that those were short-term situations and this would be much longer, potentially months, and that my living situation really wouldn't allow for that. Lily accused me of being selfish, and it hurt, honestly. She said I didn't care about her struggles and that I was prioritizing my comfort over family. I reminded her that I do care, which is why I offered alternative solutions, but she said it wasn't the same. We ended the call in frustration, and she left without a plan. A couple of days later, she sent me a message saying she found a place for a month that was way over her budget and asked me to co-sign. I refused because I can't afford to be responsible for her rent, especially not on such short notice. This escalated into a heated argument. She said I was abandoning her and that I should feel guilty for turning my back on her. I reminded her that I am not abandoning her. I am just saying that I cannot house her in my tiny apartment and I cannot co-sign for her financially. She accused me of holding grudges about past incidents where she stayed with me too long or made messes. I told her I'm not holding grudges. I'm just setting boundaries. Now, the tricky part is that other family members have gotten involved. My parents, especially, have been subtly implying that I should help her because family takes care of each other. They've said things like, she's your sister. You're lucky she even has someone to turn to, and you could at least try. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for prioritizing my own life and well-being. My friends say I'm justified, and honestly, I do feel like I am, but the guilt is creeping in because I don't want her to feel completely abandoned. I also feel guilty because I know she's struggling. She's been texting me almost every day about how stressed she is, how she can't find a job, and how the temporary place she found is really expensive. She's even mentioned that she might end up on the street if nothing works out. I've offered to help her job hunt, edit her resume, and even cover some groceries, but she keeps insisting that she needs a place to stay with me. I've tried talking to her calmly about the logistics. I said that my apartment has only one bedroom, I have limited space, and I work from home. sometimes, so having her around constantly would affect my job performance. I even suggested splitting costs and looking for a bigger shared place in the city, but she brushed it off. She says it's too complicated and she just wants to live with me. This is where I start to worry I might be unreasonable. I know that family support is important, and I know that many people in my situation might have found a way to make it work. But I also know my limits. I can't physically fit another person in my apartment for months, and I don't want to risk my own financial stability or job performance. I'm starting to wonder if I could have approached this differently, maybe by offering to pay for a short-term hotel or Airbnb, or maybe helping her find a roommate situation in a nearby city. Lily hasn't spoken to me much since our argument, except for occasional texts asking if I've changed my mind. I haven't, and honestly, I don't plan to. I'm scared that if I let her move in, it will set a precedent that she can rely on me whenever she's in trouble, which could be years of stress and tension. At the same time, I feel like I'm being portrayed as cold and uncaring. So, Reddit AITA here, am I being unreasonable by refusing to let my sister move in with me after she lost her job, even though I've helped her in the past? Or is it fair for me to set boundaries in my own home, even if it disappoints her? I'm genuinely torn because I care about her, but I also have to protect my own stability and mental health. I'd appreciate any perspective, especially from people who have had to navigate family boundaries and difficult situations like this. I don't want to damage our relationship permanently, but I also can't compromise my life in ways that feel unsafe or unsustainable for me. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live with me before the wedding. I, 29F, have always been very close to my family, especially my younger sister, Clara, 27F. We grew up in a small town and have shared practically everything, from our first crushes to our college experiences. When Clara started dating her fiancé, Mike, 30M, I thought it was great. Mike seemed charming, funny, and generally respectful. I wanted to like him, and for a while I did. But things started to get complicated when they announced they wanted to move in with me before the wedding. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. It's not huge, but it's cozy, and I've worked hard to make it a space I love. I've always been a person who values my personal space and boundaries. When Clara and Mike started talking about moving in temporarily before the wedding, I was immediately uncomfortable. They painted it as a short-term solution. Their apartment lease was ending, and they needed a place for maybe 2 or 3 months. They said it would be easier financially and that it would help them get some experience living together before marriage. I could see their point, but my gut was telling me this was a bad idea. I told them I needed to think about it. After a few days, I explained that my apartment was small, and I value my space too much to have them living there. I mentioned the potential strain on my relationship with my sister, my work-from-home schedule, and a lack of privacy. Clara didn't seem happy, but she said she understood. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Clara and Mike showed up at my door unannounced with suitcases, saying they wanted to test the waters and see if living together worked for them. I was shocked. I told them I was not comfortable with this arrangement and that they needed to leave. Clara started crying and said I was being selfish and that I didn't love her if I didn't let her stay. Mike was more subtle, trying to reason with me, saying it would only be for a short time and that they'd contribute to groceries and bills. He stood firm. I refused to let them stay in my apartment. After they left, Clara called me multiple times, texting and leaving voicemails accusing me of being cruel and unsupportive. Our parents got involved after she told them I had kicked them out. They were upset with me too, saying I should make sacrifices for family and that this was just a temporary inconvenience. My friends have been divided. Some say I'm justified because my home is my sanctuary and I shouldn't be forced to host anyone, especially adults, if I'm uncomfortable. Others say I should have compromised, at least for a little while, to help my sister and her fiancé. Things have gotten tense. Clara hasn't spoken to me in 2 weeks. Our family gatherings have become awkward, and everyone seems to be taking sides. I keep trying to explain that it's not about not loving her. It's about personal boundaries and the fact that I live alone and need my space. I even suggested they find a short-term rental or a friend's couch to crash on, but she refuses and says I'm making it harder than it needs to be. I'm beginning to feel like I'm in the wrong, even though I really don't think I am. I'm willing to help them in other ways, helping them pack, giving them advice on apartments, or even lending money if necessary. But the thought of having them live in my apartment makes me extremely anxious. I've always been an independent person, and my home is my safe space. I'm also worried about the impact on my relationship with Mike, who already seems to have this expectation that I'll bend to his and Clara's plans. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé live with me before their wedding? I feel like this is about personal boundaries and mental health, but my sister and family think I'm being selfish and unkind. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if I should try to find a compromise, but every time I think about it, my stress levels spike. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to lose my peace of mind. I just wish there were a way to support her without feeling like I'm losing my home. AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding overshadow my own family traditions. I, 32F, have always been very close to my family, particularly my younger sister, Megan, 28F. Growing up, our family had a lot of traditions that I loved: Sunday dinners, holiday decorations done together, and our annual summer camping trips that stretched for a week every year. When Megan got engaged last year, I was genuinely happy for her, but I also immediately started thinking about how her wedding plans would affect our family routines. Megan and her fiancé, Luke, 30M, are wonderful people, but they're the type of couple who want everything to be modern and Instagram ready. She announced that she wanted a destination wedding in Italy with a strict dress code, curated menus, and a 3-day itinerary that included photo shoots at famous landmarks. While I completely understand wanting a beautiful wedding, it was clear that this would completely replace the family traditions we normally hold during the summer. My husband, James, 34M, and I have 2 children, Sam, 6M, and Lila, 4F. We try hard to keep them connected to family rituals, especially since both of us are the eldest children in our respective families, and we grew up with strong ties to tradition. So, I suggested to Megan that we try to include a day or 2 of our traditional family activities at some point during her wedding trip, like a casual family meal, or perhaps a small informal gathering for those who couldn't travel. Megan got defensive and told me that she wanted her wedding to be her vision, and that mixing it with old traditions would make it feel dated and chaotic. I felt frustrated, but tried to be understanding. I didn't push much beyond that, hoping that she might see the value in some family-oriented activities on her own. However, as the planning continued, it became clear that the wedding would be entirely exclusive. Guests were limited to immediate family and a few close friends, and there would be very little downtime or flexibility. She also asked that everyone follow her strict itinerary, which meant that our usual playful and chaotic family dynamic, like kids running around, impromptu games, and late-night family chats, was entirely unwelcome. A month before the wedding, Megan asked me to be in the bridal party and to coordinate some aspects of the decorations and flower arrangements. I agreed, but I also set boundaries, letting her know that I couldn't compromise our family routines or allow the kids to be excluded entirely. She seemed to accept it at first, but later started sending passive-aggressive messages whenever I suggested small adjustments to her plans. For example, when I recommended that the kids have a designated play area or that we do a small family toast before dinner, she said, "We are trying to make this elegant and sophisticated, not a family circus." Things came to a head when she sent out the final schedule. She had scheduled a private rehearsal dinner with only her fiancé's side of the family, and then the ceremony and main dinner would be entirely structured with no informal gatherings. Our usual Sunday family dinner, which normally would have been during the wedding weekend, was completely ignored. I texted her asking if we could keep at least one evening casual, so our children could interact with cousins and feel part of the family celebration, but she told me that everything was set in stone and that I was being controlling and old-fashioned. I felt hurt and started to consider how this would affect our children and our family. The traditions I grew up with are a big part of my identity, and I didn't want my children to feel like family life was being disregarded. I spoke to James about it, and he agreed that the wedding shouldn't completely overshadow our family values. We discussed pulling back from participating fully in the wedding festivities if our family needs weren't respected. When I brought this up with Megan directly, she accused me of trying to sabotage her wedding. She said that she had spent months planning and that my insistence on family traditions was selfish. I explained that I wasn't trying to sabotage anything, just wanted to make sure that the family, especially the kids, could enjoy some part of it in a comfortable and meaningful way. She got very upset and stopped talking to me for a week. Eventually, I decided to step back. I told her I would attend the wedding, but that I wouldn't be coordinating anything or following her rigid plans to the letter. I made it clear that I would prioritize the comfort and enjoyment of our children, even if it meant leaving early or creating our own family moments away from the main events. Megan responded coldly and said I was being dramatic and that she was disappointed I couldn't be more supportive. At the wedding, things went as planned on her side. The ceremony was beautiful, but the children were mostly sidelined and the atmosphere was very formal. We ended up creating our own little family bubble in a corner of the venue where the kids could play and the adults could relax. Some relatives noticed and quietly complimented me on making sure the children were happy, while others whispered that I was being difficult. Megan seemed irritated whenever she saw us enjoying our own corner of the celebration. After returning from the wedding, our family traditions resumed, but the tension with Megan has lingered. She hasn't acknowledged our perspective or apologized for dismissing our concerns. My parents are on my side, saying that I handled it as best as I could, but Megan's friends and fiancé's family have implied that I ruined the wedding vibe for her. I am now feeling guilty and conflicted. I did not want to ruin Megan's wedding, but I also couldn't let our family values and the comfort of my children be completely disregarded. Several extended family members have asked me if I feel responsible for creating a rift, and I honestly don't know. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding overshadow my family traditions and prioritizing my children's experience over following her strict plans? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of being treated like the black sheep of the family? I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, particularly with my older sister, Emily, 33F. Growing up, it was clear I was different from the rest of the family in ways that went beyond personality. I've always been more introverted and academically driven, while Emily was the golden child, outgoing, sporty, socially charismatic, and always the center of attention. My parents openly celebrated her achievements and often compared me to her, which left me feeling invisible and constantly inadequate. As I got older, I tried to establish boundaries, but my parents never really respected them. If I didn't participate in a family event the right way or failed to meet some expectation, I was criticized or guilt-tripped. They would make comments like, "Why can't you be more like Emily?" Or, "You should try harder to be part of the family." Over time, I started to withdraw from family functions and only attended major holidays or milestones out of obligation. Fast forward to last year, Emily got engaged. From the start, I knew the wedding would be a massive event. Emily and my parents quickly involved themselves in every detail from guest lists to seating charts, leaving me feeling like my input wasn't wanted. When I gently expressed that I didn't feel comfortable with some of the arrangements, my concerns were dismissed. They framed it as me being difficult or overly sensitive, which is a common pattern in my family when I try to assert myself. The breaking point came when Emily announced that she wanted her wedding to be perfect and that she only wanted people who truly support her to attend. She added that anyone who isn't fully enthusiastic about the wedding shouldn't come because it would ruin her day. I felt like this was directed at me. I've never expressed outward excitement the way she or my family expects. Not because I don't care about her, but because their constant comparisons and criticism over the years have made me wary of showing emotion around them. Over the next few months, the wedding planning only made the situation worse. My parents repeatedly called me, pushing me to RSVP quickly and asking me to reconsider my feelings. They pressured me to join bridal party events, saying things like, "It's not just Emily, it's about family unity." I attended one bridal shower and one dress fitting, but it was excruciating. They criticized my choice of outfit, my hairstyle, even my reactions to the games and speeches. Emily herself barely acknowledged me during the events, often making jokes at my expense or subtly comparing me to other bridesmaids. A few weeks before the wedding, I had a long conversation with my mom, explaining that I felt unwelcome and uncomfortable. I told her I was considering not attending and that I needed her to understand my perspective rather than dismiss it. My mom responded by saying, "Emily is your sister. You need to put aside your feelings for one day. Think about how much it will hurt her if you're not there." My dad chimed in similarly, framing my potential absence as selfish and cold. After a lot of soul-searching, I made the decision to not attend. I sent Emily a heartfelt letter explaining that my absence wasn't out of malice or lack of love, but out of self-preservation. I told her that the environment created by the family dynamics made it impossible for me to celebrate her in the way she deserves and that I hoped someday she could understand. I also offered to meet her for a private celebration or to spend time together after the wedding, but I couldn't commit to the wedding day itself. The response was immediate and intense. Emily called me repeatedly, crying and accusing me of ruining her special day and being the family's problem child. She told me that I was selfish and that my refusal proved I don't care about anyone but yourself. My parents escalated as well, with my mom saying that I had betrayed the family and my dad calling me ungrateful. Social media became a battleground, with cousins and distant relatives expressing disappointment in me, and a few even implying that I was mentally unstable or manipulative. Some friends have told me I might be overreacting and that I should just go to avoid further conflict. Others have told me that attending would only validate a toxic pattern and that my feelings are legitimate. I've been wrestling with guilt, not because I don't love Emily, but because I don't want to be vilified as a villain in the eyes of the family. I know the wedding will be full of people I see only as extensions of this dynamic, judgmental, critical, and dismissive of me. Since I sent my letter, the tension has escalated. Emily's wedding is next month, and while I have no doubt it will be beautiful, I feel like I'm being publicly cast as the antagonist in a story I didn't write. My friends say I have a right to protect my mental health, but I can't shake the feeling of guilt or the image of my sister feeling hurt by my absence. I'm trying to balance my self-respect with empathy for her, but the two seem incompatible right now. So AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, even though I love her and have tried to be part of the family? Or is it reasonable to prioritize my mental health in a situation where past treatment has made me feel unwelcome and undervalued? I'm sharing this because I genuinely don't know if I'm wrong. I've always felt like the black sheep, and perhaps I'm overreacting, but the idea of attending the wedding feels like stepping into an environment where I will be scrutinized and belittled, and I'm unsure if I can handle it without compromising my well-being. Has anyone else been in a situation where family dynamics forced you to make a choice between your presence and your peace of mind? I want to hear perspectives that aren't automatically just go to the wedding or family comes first, because I'm struggling to reconcile love for my sister with self-preservation. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to me over the past year. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 27F. Growing up, we were close, but as we got older, differences in personality and life choices created tension. I am career-oriented and very independent, whereas Emily has always been more social and reliant on others. Our parents have always tried to mediate our disputes, but sometimes it feels like they favor her in certain situations, which has only fueled resentment on my end. The last year has been especially rough. Emily got engaged last January, and from the beginning, she insisted that her wedding be perfect and stress-free. I offered to help in any way I could. Initially, that meant attending vendor meetings, helping with invitations, and offering advice on planning. I honestly thought it would be fun and a chance to bond, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. The first red flag came when she asked me to help with the seating chart. I spent hours organizing guests, making sure family dynamics were considered, and even double-checked with parents for approval. When I presented it to her, she completely dismissed my work, saying she didn't like my choices and that I obviously didn't understand her vision. She then proceeded to redo the entire thing herself, and insisted I apologize for interfering. I felt blindsided and hurt, but tried to let it go. Things escalated when it came to dress shopping. She wanted a small entourage, just her bridesmaids and me. I was fine with this, but when we went to the first few shops, she openly criticized my opinions. When I suggested a dress that looked beautiful and would complement the wedding theme, she scoffed and said, "I didn't ask for your input. I just want you to be quiet." This wasn't a one-time thing. It repeated at every store, every fitting, and every discussion about accessories. I eventually stopped giving my opinion because it was clear it was unwelcome. The real breaking point, however, happened around my birthday last October. I had planned a small family gathering and invited both our parents and Emily. I had been excited because I hadn't had a proper celebration in years. A week before the party, Emily called to say she couldn't attend because she was too stressed about wedding planning and suggested we reschedule for another weekend. I understood the stress, but mentioned that my birthday was an important occasion for me. She responded in a way that still stings. "Your birthday is not a priority right now. I need everyone to focus on me and my wedding. Can't you just be happy for me?" I was taken aback. I reminded her that while her wedding is important, so are milestones in other family members' lives. She brushed it off and ended the call. On the day of my birthday, she sent a brief text. "Hope you enjoy your party. Sorry I can't be there. Love, Emily." It felt dismissive and selfish, and I couldn't shake the hurt. Over the next few months, there were constant small incidents. She would belittle my choices about what to wear to bridal showers, make snide comments about my work schedule, and even tried to manipulate our parents into criticizing me for being unsupportive. At one point, she said she didn't want me at the bachelorette party because I bring negative energy, and instead invited only people she thought would flatter her. I declined the invite quietly, feeling like there was no way I could be treated as family rather than competition. A month ago, the final straw happened. She asked me to help with last-minute wedding decorations the weekend before the wedding. I agreed, thinking it would be a chance to contribute without being intrusive. When I arrived, she immediately began criticizing everything I touched. "That vase isn't in the right spot. You didn't get the colors right. Why are you even here?" I tried to calmly explain that I was following the plan she had approved earlier, but she continued yelling in front of her friends and family who were helping. I ended up leaving in tears, and my parents had to calm both of us down. She later called me and said I was overreacting and accused me of being dramatic. After that incident, I told my parents and Emily that I would not be attending the wedding. I explained that being around her would be emotionally draining and that I could not support an event where I was treated with disrespect and humiliation. Emily called me selfish and said I was ruining her special day for no reason. Our parents are torn. My mom says she wishes I would just put aside the past and be there for her, while my dad says he understands my feelings but worries about family division. I've received messages from other relatives pressuring me to attend, saying it's just one day, and that family should forgive and forget. I can't help but feel like this is exactly the kind of behavior I was trying to avoid by staying away. I don't want to start an argument at her wedding or be forced into smiling and pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I miss the idea of having a close relationship with Emily, but after everything that has happened, I feel like attending her wedding would betray my own boundaries and self-respect. On the other hand, I feel guilty for potentially causing tension within the family and being labeled as the villain sister. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after the way she has treated me over the past year. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to host my brother's friends at my house and causing tension with my family. I, 35F, have always valued my personal space and my home as a sanctuary. I live alone in a modest house I purchased a few years ago, and I take pride in keeping it tidy, peaceful, and organized. I enjoy quiet evenings, reading, and occasional small gatherings with a few close friends. My younger brother, Alex, 30M, is the exact opposite. He's extremely social, loves to throw parties, and often brings his large circle of friends over to hang out. Over the years, Alex has been over my house several times with his friends, but I always made it clear that these visits should be short and respectful. For the most part, he complied, but there were a few incidents where things got out of hand. People leaving trash behind, playing loud music late at night, and even spilling drinks on my furniture. I have talked to him multiple times about respecting my space, but he brushes it off with jokes or promises he doesn't keep. Last month, Alex approached me with a request that I found very unreasonable. He and a group of about 10 friends wanted to use my house for a pregame before a concert. He assured me that it would be low-key and that everyone would be careful. I explained that 10 people is far too many for my small living room, and I didn't feel comfortable with a large, loud group in my space. I suggested that they meet at someone else's place or at a public venue, but Alex got upset. He said I was being ridiculous and that it was just a few hours. I reminded him of past incidents and how stressful it had been to clean up afterward. Despite my refusal, Alex started dropping hints to my parents and other family members, framing it as me being antisocial and unwelcoming. My parents have always had a somewhat hands-off approach, but are very social themselves, so they expressed mild disappointment. They said that family should support each other and that I could at least make an exception this one time. I explained that it's not about the family, it's about my home, comfort, and boundaries, but they seemed frustrated and said I was being inflexible. The night of the planned pregame, Alex showed up at my door with a couple of friends anyway, assuming I would eventually let them in. I refused politely but firmly, reiterating that my home is not a place for large, loud gatherings. He started arguing, saying I was ruining his fun and making him look bad in front of his friends. One of his friends tried to push the issue, but I shut the door. They ended up moving to a neighbor's house for their pregame, but the confrontation had already left me shaken. Afterward, Alex called my parents and complained about me, saying I was being unreasonably controlling and hostile. My parents visited me to discuss it, and while they understood my concerns, they said I needed to compromise more for family harmony. I tried to explain that this was not about compromise. It's about setting boundaries that protect my home and mental health. They suggested that maybe I could host him for a small gathering later or find a middle ground, but I felt that agreeing to any version of this would set a precedent for future overstepping. The tension hasn't eased. My extended family has started asking me if I am always so rigid and suggesting that I learn to loosen up for my brother. I have considered inviting him over for a one-on-one dinner or coffee to ease tensions, but I still feel justified in refusing large gatherings that disrupt my life. Alex has stopped talking to me directly for the most part, but makes comments on social media that seem passive-aggressive, like some people just can't handle fun. I have been reflecting on whether I handled this poorly. I feel strongly that my home is my sanctuary and that I am entitled to say no, even if family. However, the backlash from Alex, my parents, and other relatives makes me wonder if I am being selfish or unreasonable. AITA 4. Refusing to let my brother and his friends use my house for a pre-concert gathering and prioritizing my comfort and boundaries over family expectations. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 25F. We grew up in a small town and shared everything from clothes to secrets, and I've always been protective of her. Our parents divorced when we were young, and because I spent a lot of time helping my mom, Emily, and I naturally formed a strong bond. I have always been there for her, from comforting her after heartbreaks to supporting her through school and work challenges. Because of this, I've always considered myself not just a sister, but a sort of guardian when it comes to major life decisions. Emily started dating James, 27M, about 2 years ago. At first, I didn't have much of an opinion because I didn't know him well, but over time, I started noticing things that made me uneasy. James is charming in social settings, but when it's just the two of us, he's dismissive and controlling. For example, he makes little comments about the way I dress or talk, as if he's subtly trying to assert dominance. He once told me I was being too dramatic when I expressed concern over him canceling plans last minute with Emily, even though she was clearly upset. Over the past year, Emily and James got more serious, and I tried to keep an open mind. Emily would often share things he said to her in private, and sometimes they were just harmless jokes, but there were moments that clearly crossed boundaries. One time, James made a comment about how Emily owed him for being in his life because he's so successful and organized, and she laughed it off. Another time, he dismissed her career accomplishments, saying she doesn't need to overachieve since he's providing well financially. I tried to bring it up gently with Emily, but she brushed it off, saying, "You're imagining things. He's just teasing." As the engagement came around, the red flags became more frequent. Emily asked me to help with wedding planning, which I was happy to do. But James started getting involved in ways that made me uncomfortable. He insisted on controlling the guest list, cutting people out who he considered non-essential, and he criticized my suggestions for decorations, claiming they were too cheap or not modern enough. I tried to stay neutral, hoping Emily's happiness would take priority, but the more involved I became, the more I noticed a pattern of him belittling her in subtle ways when he thought no one else was watching. The final straw came last month. Emily and I were shopping for a bridesmaid dress, and James called multiple times. The first few times were normal check-ins, but the last call was bizarre. He started questioning why Emily needed me there, saying things like, "Does she always have to be involved in your life? You need to make your own decisions." Emily seemed flustered and apologized for letting me influence her, which broke my heart. It was clear that James wanted to isolate her from anyone who might challenge him, including me. After that, I had a serious conversation with Emily. I told her that I loved her and wanted to be there for her wedding, but I couldn't support her if James continued to treat her or anyone close to her with such disregard. I explained specific examples of behavior I found controlling and dismissive, trying to keep it about actions, not about him personally. Emily was defensive and insisted I was overreacting. She said that I was making her feel guilty for being happy and that she needed me to trust her judgment. I tried to compromise by suggesting that I could attend, but set boundaries for interactions. But she said that if I felt that strongly, maybe I shouldn't come at all. I've spent the past few weeks feeling torn. I love Emily, and I want to be part of her special day, but I also don't want to give the impression that I condone how James treats her and others. I finally told her I would not attend the wedding, explaining my reasons one more time. I also made it clear that I am still her sister, and I'm always here for her, but I can't celebrate under these circumstances. Since then, the family has been divided. My parents support me to some extent, though they're disappointed that I am not attending. Emily hasn't spoken to me much, and James posted on social media that he's thrilled Emily's family will be there for the big day, indirectly taking a jab at me. Other relatives have messaged me privately, with some saying I overstepped and others thanking me for looking out for Emily. I feel like I did the right thing because I don't want to enable behavior that could be harmful to my sister. At the same time, I feel guilty for not attending what is supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. I know Emily is hurt, and I worry this might permanently damage our relationship. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. AITA for refusing to let my sister involve my kids in her educational experiments. I, 38F, have 2 children, Lily 10 and Max 7. My sister, Rachel, 35F, has always been a bit eccentric. She's a freelance researcher who claims to be developing new educational methods for kids, and she's extremely passionate about her work. Recently, she moved into the neighborhood and has been trying to integrate her research into everyday interactions with kids, especially ours. A few months ago, she approached me with an idea. She said she wanted to conduct a series of cognitive experiments on Lily and Max, which she claimed would help develop their problem-solving, memory, and creativity skills. She assured me they were completely safe and educational. At first, I was intrigued but cautious. I asked for specifics, and what she described sounded unconventional. For example, she had Max play a series of memory games where he had to memorize sequences of unusual symbols she designed, then replicate them under strict time constraints. For Lily, she designed social problem-solving scenarios where she manipulated interactions between kids to observe their reactions. The last part made me uncomfortable. Basically, she wanted to stage conflicts between children to see how Lily would respond. I said I needed to think about it. Rachel didn't take no for an answer. She insisted that these experiments were perfectly harmless and would benefit the kids in the long run. She even said that my reluctance was holding them back from reaching their full potential. I reminded her that my kids are still very young and that I am responsible for their emotional and physical well-being. Despite my concerns, she continued to push. She started showing up at our house with notebooks and experiment kits and asking if she could do quick tests during playdates. I would firmly say no, but she sometimes tried to involve them when she was babysitting friends' children, arguing that my kids could opt in. I felt pressured and uncomfortable, so I sat down with Lily and Max to explain that they don't have to participate in anything they don't want to, no matter who asks. Things escalated a couple of weeks ago. Rachel invited Lily over to her house for what she described as a creativity workshop. Lily was hesitant but curious, so I agreed under the condition that I could observe. When I arrived, I realized the workshop was more of a psychological test. Rachel had Lily perform a series of puzzles under time pressure while documenting her reactions. She also asked some personal questions about Lily's friendships and family life. Lily seemed anxious and kept glancing at me. I stopped the session immediately and told Rachel this was not acceptable. Rachel reacted angrily. She accused me of being overprotective and said I was preventing my children from achieving cognitive excellence. She also suggested that I was interfering with her career because she couldn't get meaningful data without my children. I told her that my children's well-being is not a lab experiment and that I would not allow them to be part of these activities anymore. She then started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about parents too afraid to let their kids grow and even tagged me in one post. Our family became divided. Some relatives sided with her, saying I was being overly strict, while others agreed that she was pushing boundaries. Recently, she sent me a formal proposal asking for written consent to include Lily and Max in a series of educational experiments over the next year. She promised all sorts of benefits, like enhanced cognitive skills, social adaptability, and creativity. I refused and responded firmly that my children will not participate in any of her experiments now or in the future. The problem is that Rachel has started to exclude my family from family gatherings. She says that if I won't let my children participate in her work, then she cannot involve them in family events. This has created a tense atmosphere at holidays and birthdays, and it's starting to affect my children. Lily has mentioned feeling sad that her cousins are going to Rachel's house, and she isn't invited, while Max is frustrated because he doesn't understand why his aunt is upset with him. Some of my friends and extended family say I should compromise and let her do some harmless activities with the kids, especially since she's clearly intelligent and wants to help them. Others say that I am right to protect my children from being treated as research subjects. I feel strongly that my kids' autonomy and emotional safety come first, but I worry that refusing entirely is making family relationships worse. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister involve my children in her educational experiments, even though she believes it's for their benefit. Additional context: I have never interfered with my sister's professional life before, but I draw the line at my children being used in research. My children are not completely opposed to creative or cognitive activities. They enjoy games and learning, but they're stressed by structured experiments with strict evaluation. Rachel has a history of pushing boundaries in professional and personal relationships, often arguing that her intentions justify her actions. My spouse fully supports me in the decision to refuse participation. I want to maintain a relationship with my sister, but I cannot compromise on this issue. At the same time, I feel guilty that my children are missing out on family events because of this conflict. Has anyone else dealt with a family member who is a research enthusiast pushing experiments on kids? Am I being unreasonable for putting a firm boundary, or should I consider some compromise for the sake of family harmony? AITA for refusing to give my mother access to my bank account after she repeatedly mishandled my finances? I, 29F, have always been careful with money. I grew up in a household where finances were a constant source of stress. My mother, Karen, 55F, has always struggled with budgeting and tends to make impulsive purchases, sometimes leading to serious financial trouble. I am careful, save consistently, and manage my money independently. I have a savings account, checking account, and a small investment portfolio, all of which I manage without assistance. A few years ago, when I was 25, my mother asked me if she could be added as an authorized user on my bank account. She framed it as a way for me to learn from her experience and for her to help me manage my money. I trusted her at the time because she has a lot of life experience, and I thought maybe having her perspective could be helpful. I regret that decision now. Initially, things went well. She would occasionally suggest budget adjustments and remind me to save for emergencies. But soon, she began making withdrawals without asking, sometimes transferring money from my account to pay for her own bills or impulsive purchases. At first, I tried to be understanding, thinking it was a one-time mistake, but it became a pattern. I noticed withdrawals for expensive restaurant dinners, shopping sprees, and even donations to charities I had no interest in supporting. I confronted her multiple times, explaining that this was my money and I was uncomfortable with her making withdrawals. Each time, she apologized and promised it would not happen again. Despite her assurances, she continued to withdraw money without consent. It reached a point where I was left scrambling to cover my own bills because she had depleted funds I needed for rent, groceries, and other essentials. Last year, I decided I had to take action. I closed the joint access she had and transferred all my money to accounts she could not access. When I told her, she became furious. She claimed I was being ungrateful, controlling, and disrespectful. She said that she had only been trying to help me manage my finances and accused me of turning into a selfish adult. I tried to explain that trust had been broken repeatedly and that it was not safe for her to have access to my accounts, but she refused to listen. Since then, the tension has escalated. My mother frequently calls me, leaving long voicemail messages expressing disappointment and guilt-tripping me. She tells my father and other family members that I am treating her unfairly. Some relatives have sided with her, saying I should have worked things out instead of cutting her off entirely. They argue that family should help each other and that I am being too strict with someone who is just trying to be involved in my life. The situation came to a head last month when she asked again if she could be added to my account just temporarily to help me with taxes. I refused firmly, reiterating that our past experiences make it impossible for me to trust her with my finances. She called me selfish and manipulative and ended up posting on social media, framing the story in a way that makes me look like I am alienating my mother. I've tried to set other boundaries. I have offered to discuss financial decisions, share budgeting advice, and even teach her how to manage her own money better, but she interprets any refusal to let her access my accounts as personal rejection. I want to maintain a relationship with her, but I cannot risk my financial stability. My partner, friends, and a few family members understand my perspective, agreeing that repeated breaches of trust justify my actions. However, many relatives and family friends think I should have been more patient or found a way to include her without excluding her completely. The guilt and pressure are significant, and I'm questioning whether I am being unreasonable. So, AITA for refusing to give my mother access to my bank account after repeated mishandling of my finances, even though she frames her involvement as helpful and claims I am being selfish. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after what happened at my sister's engagement. I, 28F, come from a fairly close-knit family, or at least I used to think we were close. My family is the type where gatherings are mandatory, and skipping events is often viewed as a personal affront. This story revolves around my cousin, Lisa, 26F, and my sister, Anna, 30F, and the drama that has now made me seriously reconsider attending any family events for the foreseeable future. Anna got engaged about a year ago. She's always been the more outgoing and dramatic sibling, whereas I'm more of a quiet observer. When she announced her engagement, the family went nuts. Lisa, who is usually easygoing, was invited to help plan the engagement party. At first, I thought this would be fine. She's my cousin, and I actually like her. But as the planning progressed, things started to get tense. Lisa, for reasons I still don't fully understand, took it upon herself to correct certain elements of Anna's party planning. She critiqued the invitations, the guest list, the seating arrangements, and even the color scheme of the decorations. I didn't think much of it initially because Anna is usually pretty strong-willed, and I assumed she would stand up to Lisa. But Anna, for some reason, started doubting herself and gave in to Lisa's suggestions. I tried to voice my opinion when I thought Lisa was overstepping, but every time I said something, Lisa would subtly turn it around to make me look like I was being overbearing or negative. The engagement party itself was a disaster, not because of any major mishaps, but because of the underlying tension. Lisa spent the entire evening subtly criticizing things in front of the guests, complaining about the hors d'oeuvres, saying the music was too bland, and making snide remarks about Anna's dress. At one point, she loudly questioned why certain relatives were invited, implying that they were irrelevant or old-fashioned. I tried to defuse situations, but it only seemed to make Lisa more aggressive. The final straw was the gift table incident. Anna had set up a table for gifts and cards. Lisa decided to rearrange all of Anna's carefully organized presents and even remove some that she deemed unworthy. When Anna tried to confront her, Lisa just smiled and said, "I'm only helping you make better choices." Several family members laughed nervously, and Anna, overwhelmed, didn't really push back. I could see the hurt in Anna's eyes, and I felt powerless because nothing I said seemed to matter. After the engagement party, Anna confided in me that she felt completely undermined and humiliated in front of our family. She said she appreciated my support, but didn't want to cause a scene or start a fight. I understood that, but I couldn't shake the frustration and anger toward Lisa. I felt she had crossed a line, and I was worried about how this dynamic might continue into Anna's wedding planning. Fast forward to last week, when Lisa called to announce that she was getting married herself in a few months. The wedding invitation was sent out, and it was immediately clear that Lisa had taken over everything in planning. The tone of the invitation alone was controlling, specifying dress colors, arrival times, and even a strict seating plan. Knowing how she acted during Anna's engagement, I felt anxious about attending. I expressed my concerns to Anna, who advised me to just go and try to be polite. But I kept thinking about all the subtle manipulations and criticism I witnessed before and how it completely overshadowed Anna's special day. I also remembered a particularly humiliating moment when Lisa made a guest cry because she made a joke about their relationship history in front of everyone. I realized that attending Lisa's wedding might put me in a position to either witness or inadvertently support similar behavior. I decided not to attend Lisa's wedding. I called her and politely said that I couldn't come due to personal reasons and wished her well. Lisa immediately became defensive, accusing me of holding grudges, being family drama, and suggesting that I was trying to hurt her by not attending. Several family members reached out afterward, asking why I was choosing sides and telling me I should just get over it for the sake of family unity. I tried explaining my perspective, that I have witnessed behavior I find manipulative and hurtful, and that I don't feel comfortable attending a wedding where I anticipate witnessing more of it. But most family members dismissed my concerns. Some even suggested that my refusal was an overreaction and that it was my duty to attend a family event, no matter my personal feelings. Since then, my relationship with Lisa has deteriorated. She sends passive-aggressive messages and posts subtle comments on social media about how sad it is that I won't be attending. I've also noticed my other cousins and some extended family members quietly judging me, though a few have privately admitted they understand why I feel the way I do. I am torn because I don't want to be seen as the person who refuses family obligations, but at the same time, I feel that attending would compromise my mental well-being and potentially enable behavior I find toxic. I am trying to maintain boundaries, but the pressure from multiple family members has made me question whether I am overreacting or being unfair to Lisa. So, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin Lisa's wedding after what happened at my sister Anna's engagement party. I know that family unity is important, but I also feel that protecting myself and avoiding unnecessary drama is equally valid. I genuinely wish Lisa the best, but I cannot bring myself to participate in an event I suspect will be another emotionally charged and manipulative situation. I've already prepared for backlash, but I wanted to hear an outside perspective. Is my refusal unreasonable, or am I justified in prioritizing my mental health over family obligations? AITA for refusing to lend my car to my brother after he wrecked it once before? I, 28F, have always been the responsible one in my family when it comes to money, possessions, and general life organization. I work a full-time job as a project manager, and I've managed to save up enough to buy a reliable used car about 2 years ago. It's not new or flashy, but runs well, gets good mileage, and honestly, I'm proud of how I've maintained it. My younger brother, Jake, 24M, has always been more reckless. He's the kind of person who drives fast, ignores maintenance, and generally treats things like they're disposable. About a year ago, Jake asked to borrow my car because his own was in the shop. I was hesitant, but I decided to trust him. I told him explicitly that I needed him to be careful and that I wanted him to fill up the gas tank before returning it. I also reminded him that any damages or fines would be his responsibility. He agreed. Unfortunately, he returned the car a few days later with a big dent in the passenger side door. He claimed he ran into a pole while trying to park and offered to pay for the repair. I was upset, but I accepted the situation because he at least took responsibility. The repair cost about $800, which he paid over a few months. That experience made me very wary of lending him anything again. Fast forward to last month, Jake called me out of the blue. He said his car broke down completely and that he needed a ride to work for a week. He started hinting that I could just lend him my car. I told him I couldn't, citing that I need it for my own work commute and errands. He got defensive, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was holding a grudge over a year-old incident. He then proposed a compromise. He'd borrow my car only on weekends. I explained that even weekend use could result in accidents or damages, and I wasn't comfortable taking that risk. He argued that he had changed, that he's more responsible now, and that I should trust him. I tried to stay calm and reminded him that the trust he broke once makes it hard for me to risk my property again. Jake then brought up another point. Our cousin, Sam, 26M, had lent him his car recently without incident. He used this as evidence that he could handle my car responsibly. I tried to explain that just because someone else hasn't had issues doesn't mean I should ignore my own past experiences. I even offered to drive him places myself, but he said that's inconvenient for him and started raising his voice. The situation escalated when he sent me a series of texts calling me selfish and saying that our family members think I'm being dramatic. My parents, when I called them for advice, told me they understand my hesitation, but also suggested that I learn to forgive and give second chances. I told them that forgiveness doesn't mean I have to put myself at financial or personal risk, and that lending a car that could cost thousands to repair isn't just a simple act of forgiveness. A few days later, I found out that he had been asking my friends if they could lend him cars too. Some of them reported back that he pressured them heavily. This made me feel even more vindicated in my decision. I finally confronted him, telling him that I won't lend him my car and that I expect him to respect my decision. He said that if I was truly a good sister, I would let him borrow it. I did not respond further and blocked his number temporarily to avoid the constant barrage of messages. When he realized he couldn't guilt me, he started posting on social media about how I hate family and never help anyone. My parents eventually mediated, suggesting that I compromise somehow. I stood my ground, explaining that a compromise isn't just about willingness. It's also about safety and responsibility. The thing is, I offered alternatives. I could drive him to work, help him find a temporary rental, or even co-sign for a short-term lease if he wanted a car for a few months. I'm willing to help, but not in a way that risks my property or my financial stability. He refuses all these options. Some family members now think I'm being too harsh, saying I should trust my brother or stop holding past mistakes against him. Others understand that my car is my personal property and that he has proven he can be careless. I honestly feel like I'm in the right, but the constant pressure and guilt tripping is making me second-guess myself. AITA for refusing to lend my car to my brother, even though he promises he's changed? Or am I right to prioritize my safety and possessions over his convenience. AITA for refusing to let my father move in with me after he lost his house. Even though my family thinks I'm heartless, I, 33F, live in a medium-sized city in a two-bedroom apartment that I rent with my partner, David, 35M. We live modestly but comfortably, and we have a small dog and a very structured daily routine. I work from home as a graphic designer, and David has a regular office job. We value our personal space and have a quiet, predictable life, which is very important to both of us. My father, Paul, 60M, has always been a little unpredictable and sometimes financially irresponsible. He owns a small cabin in the countryside, but due to a combination of poor planning and medical bills, he lost the cabin and is now essentially homeless. About a month ago, he called me, asking if he could move in temporarily until he gets back on his feet. I hesitated because my apartment is small, and adding another adult would significantly impact our lives and routines. I told him I needed to think about it. David and I discussed the situation at length. We both agreed that while we want to support my father, our home is not equipped for long-term guests. We also had concerns based on past experiences. When my father stayed over for a few weeks a couple of years ago after a minor car accident, he ended up overstaying, borrowing money without returning it promptly, rearranging things in the apartment, and leaving messes in common areas. That experience left us both frustrated and stressed. I spoke to my father honestly and explained our concerns. I told him we couldn't accommodate him in our apartment, but I suggested alternative solutions, helping him find a small rental, looking into temporary senior housing programs, or staying with friends who had extra space. He reacted poorly. He accused me of being heartless and said I was choosing comfort over family. He claimed that because I have a steady job and a home, it's my responsibility to take him in. After that conversation, my mother got involved. She has always tried to mediate in family disputes, and she called me several times, asking why I wouldn't help my own father and why I was turning my back on him. She implied that refusing him was cruel and that I was damaging my relationship with him. My siblings also expressed disappointment. My brother said I was selfish and that if I cared about family, I would make sacrifices to help him. I tried to explain that helping someone doesn't always mean bringing them into your home, especially when past experiences show it could create stress, tension, and resentment. I offered to pay for a hotel for a few nights, help with deposits for a rental, and assist in finding community programs that could support him. My father and family dismissed these solutions, insisting that they were temporary fixes and that a real daughter would make room in her own home. To complicate things further, my father began posting on social media about his situation, subtly implying that I was refusing to help him because I didn't care. Some mutual friends reached out to me, expressing concern and questioning my decision. This has caused awkwardness in my social circle and increased the emotional pressure. David and I are now feeling trapped. We want to support my father without compromising our mental health and the stability of our household. We've discussed that if we were to allow him to move in, it could be for months or even longer, and our previous experience makes it likely that boundaries would be tested again. We also worry that our small apartment could become a source of constant conflict, which might strain our relationship. Despite the pushback, I am sticking to my decision. I've offered consistent alternatives to living with us, but they have been rejected. I have tried to communicate calmly, compassionately, and logically, but it seems that no solution satisfies my father or the family except for letting him move in. I am now feeling guilty, anxious, and isolated. I wonder if I am failing as a daughter or if I am justified in prioritizing my own household stability and my relationship with my partner. I understand that family should help each other, but I also believe that support does not have to come at the expense of one's own well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my father move in with me after he lost his home, even though my family thinks I am heartless for not providing him with shelter. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of my entire family. I, 29F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we were inseparable, and I was always protective of her. As we got older, our relationship became a bit more complicated. Emily has always been dramatic and a bit controlling, while I tend to be more easygoing and private. Despite this, I always try to support her in every way possible. That is, until recently. Emily has been engaged to her fiancé, Daniel, 28M, for about a year. From the start, I felt uneasy about the relationship. Daniel is charming in public, but I noticed some red flags early on. He is dismissive of anyone he sees as a threat to his relationship with Emily, and he has a tendency to manipulate situations to make himself look good. I try to keep my opinions to myself because I didn't want to cause unnecessary tension, but my discomfort grew as the wedding planning progressed. A few weeks ago, Emily hosted a family dinner at our parents' house. I was running late because I had been stuck at work, and when I arrived, everyone was seated and chatting. Emily immediately pulled me aside and started yelling about how unreliable I am and how I never make time for family. I tried to explain that work had been hectic and that I had called to let her know I was on my way, but she didn't want to listen. She continued berating me in front of my parents, grandparents, and cousins, making a scene about my supposed failures and comparing me to her friends, who she said are perfect daughters and sisters. I was mortified. I've never been yelled at like that in front of the whole family, especially not by Emily. I tried to respond calmly, telling her that this was humiliating and unfair, but she dismissed me, saying I was too sensitive and needed to grow thicker skin. The rest of the dinner was tense, with Emily giving me the cold shoulder while Daniel smirked at me like he was enjoying the spectacle. After that night, I was shaken. I've never experienced such public humiliation from someone I trusted so much. I decided to take a step back from wedding planning events because I didn't want to subject myself to more emotional abuse. Emily called me several times, insisting I come to the bridal shower she had organized, but I declined politely, citing work commitments and exhaustion. She became increasingly aggressive, sending long texts accusing me of not supporting her big day and being selfish. Things came to a head last weekend. Emily had a pre-wedding brunch with close family and friends, and she explicitly told me that my presence was expected. I tried to explain that I still wasn't comfortable being around her after what happened at the family dinner. Emily responded by saying that I was choosing my pride over our relationship, and that she didn't want me at her wedding either if I couldn't behave. She also added that Daniel agreed with her and didn't want me there, claiming it was for everyone's comfort. At this point, I realized that my presence at the wedding might not only be uncomfortable for me, but also for other family members who had witnessed the earlier confrontation. I also didn't want to pretend everything was fine and risk another public confrontation. So, I told Emily that I would not attend her wedding. I sent a message explaining that I love her and want to be part of her life, but that I cannot participate in a day where I am made to feel humiliated and unsafe. I offered to meet after the wedding to celebrate privately and support her in other ways, but she refused to respond. After sending that message, I received a flood of texts and calls from family members, some supporting my decision and others criticizing it. My parents are upset because they feel I am punishing Emily on her big day and causing unnecessary drama. A few cousins have said I am overreacting and that I should get over a minor argument, while my aunt and uncle, who witnessed Emily's behavior at the dinner, told me they completely understand and would support me if I choose not to attend. The thing that bothers me the most is that Emily has never once acknowledged her own behavior. She keeps framing me as the villain, saying I am cold, selfish, and resentful, even though I tried to address my feelings calmly and privately. I feel like my absence is now being painted as an attack on her happiness rather than a boundary I need for my own emotional well-being. I'm starting to feel guilty because I know this is her wedding and everyone is focused on her happiness. But at the same time, I cannot bring myself to attend an event where I might be publicly shamed again. I also feel frustrated that my parents are pressuring me to put aside our differences without acknowledging the humiliation I endured. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of our family? I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but I'm also worried that I'm being perceived as selfish or petty. I want to support Emily in the long run, but I also cannot ignore my own emotional boundaries. Has anyone experienced something like this, where attending a family milestone feels impossible due to past conflicts? I'm torn between wanting to preserve my relationship with my sister and protecting myself from further emotional harm. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.